We're going to take a look here at creating box and whisker plots. So box and whisker plots split our data into 4 parts, and we call those parts quartiles, right? And you can think of quarters. Quartiles, quarters sounds like similar things, and quarters split a dollar into 4. So these 4 parts are split using the quartiles, using what we call quartiles. And the quartiles refer to the locations where we split our data. So if you think about folding a piece of paper into 4 parts, we only actually have 3 creases in the paper, right? 1, 2, and 3. And these are what we call our quartiles, and we label them Q1, Q2, and Q3. So these are our quartiles. All right, so when we split the data, we start by splitting it in half. And you can think about that folding a paper reference. Again, if we're folding a piece of paper into 4 parts, it's easiest if we start by folding it in half first. And this is really just our median. So the median of the data splits it into 2 parts, and we also give our median a second name, which is our Q2, right? So it's right there in the middle. We then find the median of those halves, and this gives us all 4 regions of our data. So if we think back to that piece of paper that we were folding, we take each of those halves and we split them in half again, and now we have 4 sections, and we created our Q1 and Q3s while doing that. So we want to find the 3 quartiles of the data set before we go about creating any box and whisker plots. So when we're creating a median, or when we're finding a median, we always want to put our data set in ascending or least to greatest order first. So let's do that. All right, so here is our data set. So we want to go ahead and find our median. And the way we did that before was just crossing off from either side. We want to use the rest of our data again though. So what I'm going to do is, instead of crossing off, I'm going to put dots on top so the rest of my data stays clean and usable. All right, so we've come to the middle and we have 2 numbers right in the middle here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the average of those 2 numbers, right? 18 plus 23 divided by 2. And this is 20.5. And this is our Q2 value, or our median. So now we need to find our other quartiles. So by splitting our data in half, we've created 2 halves here of our data. And because neither 18 nor 23 were actually our median, we do include them in these halves. So we want to go ahead and find these other medians. So we're going to just go ahead and find our middles, just like we did before. So for this one, we're going to take an average of 6 and 11, which is 8.5, and this is going to be our Q1 because it's our first quartile. And for our right half, we're going to take the average of 28 and 30, which is 29, and this is our last quartile, so this is our Q3. So when we look at creating a box and whisker plot graphically, our box and whisker plot will show the 3 quartiles, and they'll be shown by the ends of our box and a line in the middle of the box, right? Those are our Q1, Q2, and Q3 values. So our Q1, our Q2, or our median, and our Q3. It'll also show us the least and the greatest data values. So we'll have our minimum and our maximum, or our least and our greatest. All right. We call this part right here, we call that our box. And we call the little tails on the end, we call those our whiskers. So if we want to go ahead and label this again, we have a minimum value, a maximum value, a Q1, a Q2, and a Q3. One thing to remember is since we cut things into quarters, the 4 regions, each region houses 25% of our data points. Now, when we graph these, they might not look even, but keep in mind that's because it's representing the spread of our data, how far apart the points are, but there's still the same number of points in each quarter. So take a moment on the next page. We are going to create our data sets here, okay? So we always want to start by finding that median. So take a moment and find the middle of your data. So I just put little dots above each number, left, right, until we found the middle. So right in between 14 and 16 is our median, or our Q2. And so we'll average that. 14 plus 16 divided by 2 is 15. Then we want to find the middle of our halves, right? So our Q1 and our Q2. So we're just going to do the same technique as before. So our Q1 is in between 5 and 7, so we'll average those. That's 6. And our Q3, we're going to cross off left and right. And it's right in between 25 and 27. And that is 26. So we want to go ahead and use this to create our box and whisker. And remember, we have a minimum and a maximum value as well, or smallest and our largest data value. So we always put a dot right at our minimum and a dot right at our maximum. And then remember, our quartiles create our boxes. So at 6, I'm going to draw a vertical line or a line segment. And then again at 15. And then again at 26. Now those vertical line segments that I created, we're going to go ahead and form them into a box and connect up our end whiskers. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is to label your values on here, because we graphed these and they're approximate, right? We didn't make a perfect graph with grid paper. So I want to make sure that everyone knows the data value. So if we think about this as far as the 25% of data, what we can see is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, 6 numbers right in this area, right, between 2 and 6. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers right here between 6 and 15. And another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers here in this third part, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers right here. So we can see that even breakdown of points, but we can also see that our whiskers aren't necessarily the same size. And that's because the numbers over here on the right are further apart from each other than the numbers on the left, but there's still only 6 numbers in each section. So let's create another one. This one isn't already in least to greatest order for us, so we have to take a moment and put it in order from least to greatest. And once we have our data from least to greatest, we can start finding our quartiles. So our quartile right here, our Q2, is right at 25. So when I go to find my other quartiles, I've kind of used up 25. I'm not going to use it again. So my Q1 is going to be in between 8 and 13. So we'll take 8 plus 13 divided by 2. That's 10.5. And over here, my Q3 is going to be in between 33 and 34. And that is going to be 33.5. And this is where it becomes especially important to write our values when we draw our graph, because then whoever is reading your box and whisker will know what you're talking about. I'm going to put a dot at my minimum value of 5, and approximately that vertical segment at where 10.5 would about be, then at 25, then at 33.5, and then a dot at my maximum value of 36. And we'll connect this all up, creating our whiskers and our box. And we just want to make sure that we're labeling. So our minimum value of 5, our Q1 value of 10.5, our Q2 value of 25, our Q3 value of 33.5, and then our maximum of 36.